Yeah, and even if you want to go a step further into like abductions and things like that, just theoretically, they get beamed up, when they get beamed back down, it makes perfect sense. They're not going to get beamed back down in the exact pinpoint spot, they got sucked up.
It's like the typical UFO shit where like somebody's shirt's on backwards or somebody's wearing like a different shirt. Like there's always just something that's like a little bit off because they're not fully aware. Like it's kind of like the idea of like you come into somebody else's home and you don't know exactly how shit's set up. Like if you're constantly a regular in that area, like you'd know and you keep everything to like a T. But if they're not even necessarily like using the same items as us, or they wouldn't even necessarily know how they would be used specifically by us, like there's no standard of, there's no point of reference. They're just kind of like putting it back together and throwing it down. Especially if there's like the time loss aspect to it, then they're just kind of maybe like, fuck it, who cares? Just fucking get them out of the UFO. Let's go.
And I have one more thought. The thing about the objects disappearing when left inside of the circles overnight, like if this was the fairy circles, they might consider those gifts, so they took them.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like offerings,
absolutely.
And there's something later in the notes that kind of lends some credence to that, I think. But just kind of piggybacking off of everything we were just saying here, it seems like just the folklore and the legends around this area is just like this huge intersection of fairy and UFO type stuff, so I mean, I thought this was right up our alley. This is like basically the shit we always talk about is, issues of language, and it's kind of all rolled into this topic. And this is something that's kind of hyper local to where we're at. Like this is something that there's not a whole lot of information out there about that I've found. It's all really local. Like news stations will go and do a 30-second report, or like the North Carolina Traveler or things like that. But I haven't seen this talked about in the paranormal community as much as I feel like it kind of merits. So that's kind of why I was excited to talk about this and draw some more attention to it.
What if it's just to kind of connect it into just weird phenomenon in general, connecting with this spot. So you hear about the whole concept about the different dimensions and like the perspective from different dimensions, like the idea that you'd have like a ball, but if something was like in water and you threw the ball down on the water, they'd only be looking at it as a big circle. They wouldn't see that it's a sphere. They'd only be seeing like the one angle of it. So what if this is like a spot that is like a high traffic spot, or it's just connected into something weird like that, and we're looking at it from the wrong perspective because we're in like the wrong dimension looking at it. Like we're looking at it like it's a flat circle on the ground, but if you're looking at it from like another dimensional standpoint, it may have like a totally different shape, and we're only seeing piece of it in our reality because we're not being able to, we can't see the full structure of this thing because it's not something that exists in our reality, but rather something that's like touching our reality.